Dear friends, today is one of those days where we enjoyed chess so much. You know that in a game of chess, there are three key moments, right? The first is the opening, to see which of the two players is better prepared to make the first moves and be better off for the second part of the game. What is the second part? The complex middle game is where all the pieces are already fighting each other, and there are usually many more tactics involved. After all that intensity, when this fierce medieval battle has been waged in the middle of the game, we finally reach the third and final phase of the match, which is known as the endgame. Whoever manages to control those three stages, let's say, of the game will undoubtedly achieve many more victories. Mind you, when we are in the opening, we must also start thinking about the middle game. When we are in the middle game, we also have to start thinking about the end game. We're going to demonstrate all this in a game, and we're going to learn a lot with a great game that's going to blow your mind. The white pieces played king's pawn, e4, and black responded with the Sicilian defense, c5. Very well. The game continues with the most traditional moves in the world, knight f3, main move, e6. One of the main variations of the Sicilian defense as well. And here, white can play in several ways, but the most aggressive of all, if you've ever studied how to play against the Sicilian defense, if not, I'll explain it to you, is this one here, d4. Because we are opening the center, we are breaking through with great force, hitting against this core pawn that is directly aiming at the center, and so they practically have no choice but to exchange it for our central pawn. You already know that the first objective of all in the Sicilian defense is to exchange a side pawn for a central pawn, so the game continues in this way. C takes d4, knight takes d4, and knight f6. A minor piece is developed while attacking a central pawn. What should we do? Develop a minor piece while defending it. There are two moves, right? Bishop d3 and knight c3. Both are possible, but it's better to develop the knight first, because normally it's usually better to develop the knights, that's for starters, and then because this knight, we know for sure we're going to develop it via c3, whereas this bishop, we still don't know if it's going to go to e2, d3, c4, or even b5. We don't know, so we develop the knight that we already know where it's going, and depending on what our opponent does, right? Well, then we'll develop the light-squared bishop. Perfect. Our opponent here, or rather the opponent in the game, played knight c6. Excellent. They are threatening our central knight. At this point, we have two options, either keep playing or exchange knights. Actually, both options are perfectly correct. Why? Because if we exchange knights, all we're really doing is, if we both have two pieces developed, by exchanging these knights, we'll both have one piece developed. It's absolutely fine. The game will just continue as usual. In fact, what the white player did here was capture this knight right here. Knight takes knight, pawn takes knight, and now there would be several moves, but the most critical one was the one the white player used. He thought, I want to play with the initiative. There are probably several correct moves here, as always. We could develop this bishop, or we could develop this other one. But here, the white player played with the initiative and placed a pawn on e5, attacking this knight. Once we expand this much, we have to keep something super important in mind. Every time we move a pawn, and I've said this many times in my videos, we create weaknesses. Which square was this pawn defending? The d5 square. When we advance to attack the knight can take over this square for itself. Plus, it's completely safe here, defended by its two pawns. I wonder, would it be a good idea to exchange knights? Well, yes, it would be a good idea. Knight takes knight would mean exactly the same as before. One piece we've developed for one our opponents have also developed. However, here the white player wanted to go a step further and understood perfectly that black had left a very important hole here on the d6 square. I'm sure you can all see it. To place one of his knights, in this case the only one he has, is this knight on c3. And look at what a beautiful maneuver, right? Knight to e4, with the idea of jumping with the knight to d6 and wreaking some havoc on black's position, right? Look at what a beautiful square he has there. well, beautiful like the board. Today I'm recording with spectacular lighting and with a premium board that, as always, I'll leave for you down in the description. As always. The idea here for white, as we said, is to put the knight here. But, of course, they're not going to make it easy. And that's why black plays this queen to d7, this queen to c7. Such a good move. In fact, we're still in the opening phase because the pieces are still being developed, okay? Once the pieces are developed, we'll move on to the middle game. They're attacking our e4 pawn. Moving the knight into that position wouldn't be a good idea anymore because that square is very heavily defended by both the bishop and the queen, and we would only have that single pawn there to support the piece. So here they're forcing us to defend this pawn, right? How can we defend it? Well, there's only one way. The bishop couldn't come to defend it on the f4 square because it would be captured. The only way to defend it is with the pawn to f4. Many of you are probably wondering, why can't I defend it with the queen? Good, because the queen is usually a poor defender. Since she's the most powerful piece in the game, she can be driven away very easily, and then we couldn't keep defending it. Therefore, we'd lose the pawn no matter what, and it would be a bad move. f4, however, is a good move. It seems at first that white has gained a lot of space, but they're also having their problems. Having advanced so far, look at what black does. They place the queen now on this diagonal that goes from b6, now with the queen, to the g1 square, where they have absolute control, and where they surely won't make it easy for us to castle. The game continues with the next move, c4. That knight is too well placed and is taking away extremely important squares from us. As you can see, it occupies these two squares, it occupies these two squares. At some point, we want to drive the queen away with bishop e3. And the knight is also occupying this square, so c4 is a pretty interesting move. Yes, we're moving the pawns a lot, but we're doing it with some logic. It's true that the white player is opting for a fairly aggressive game. It's not usually normal to advance the pawn so much, but, well, as long as we follow some criteria, we can do what we want. They could move the knight away, right? Once we're attacking the knight, they could move it or they could make a threat. That's greater. In this case, black chooses to play this bishop b4 check. Obviously a much greater threat than the knight because we must react to the check. I'd ask you here to pause the video for a moment and try to think how you'd stop this check, because it's tremendously important. I'll explain it to you. Surely many of you have thought of bishop d2. It seems like a very natural move, right? But no, it would be a mistake. Due to the pin, they could play queen e3 check, and our position is quite doubtful. We can't take the queen since the bishop is pinned. We'd have to block with the bishop, then they take the knight. If we cover with the queen to defend the knight, the bishop comes to d2. We can't take with the queen, but must use the knight, then they continue threats like knight in. This variation doesn't interest us. We must calculate this and train that skill before playing bishop d2 on the board when they give us this check. It's important to train all phases of the game, openings as well as middle game and end games, but also, as you can see, calculation. Calculation's essential. As you know, 2 days ago, we opened the channel's official academy, and inside you can improve your openings because you have over 60 opening courses. That's impressive, 60 opening courses, huh? You also have incredible exercises created by grandmasters for the middle game. This principle also applies perfectly to endgames. You can also train your calculation skills in a variety of highly effective and diverse methods. And in addition to all of these resources, you have access to classes taught by titled masters and by me every single week in a convenient video format. And then you can review them on a virtual board that's there. Well, the Academy is absolutely amazing. We've been working on it for months. If you want to take a look, I suggest you join. You have it right down here in the description, okay? All right, so what should we play here with the white pieces if we're being checked? Well, the only correct move is King E2. How do you see this? Let's see. At first glance, it looks like a very ugly move. Yes, in chess, there are ugly moves. We're placing the king, blocking the bishop's diagonal, blocking the queen's diagonal, and putting it in the center, which seems to not only hurt our development, but we're also placing it very insecurely. That's true, but you'll see that since white has a good piece set up, they can continue their attack in a natural way. Luckily, this entire opening is well studied. If you have the opening well studied, you won't have major problems with whatever your opponent plays because you'll already know how to react, okay? That's why in the academy, you can also study openings very thoroughly. Black plays f5, an important move. Do you remember we were attacking their knight? Careful, they're also attacking ours. So we have to make a decision. Do we trade knights? That's the first thing that should come to mind. What would happen if we traded knights? Well, it would probably be a bad option. Let's calculate why. If we capture here and they capture here, our king looks like it's in a very, very bad spot. Their bishop could surely also come in through a 6 to check us. Both bishops and the queen cut off all the king's diagonals, and this looks to be, at the very least, very, very dangerous. Therefore, honestly, when I see a variation as dangerous or as tricky as this one, I don't even go there. I'm going to calculate other variations. For example, I can move the knight and then he'll move his. For instance, I can play knight f2 and he, well, honestly, could play several moves, either knight c7 or first pin my pawn so I can't capture. Well, that would be an option. Logically, also, when they play f5 in this case, since we have a pawn on the 5th rank, we can capture en passant. So here we must calculate what would happen if we captured, right? If we capture here, we forced him to capture with the knight, because if he captures with the pawn, he's losing it. You see, so he must capture with the knight. This is what happened in the game. The king stays more or less safe. The bishop attack on a6 doesn't seem so aggressive for now, because you can always defend with b3, right? This would be good news for us, and besides, this king can't be attacked for the moment. The game continues with a very interesting move. One of the benefits of having the king on e2, which are few, it's true, but it has some benefit, is that it supports the e3 square so our bishop can come into play while threatening the opponent's queen. We gain a tempo while developing a piece. Even though there are still pieces to develop, we'd now be in the middle game. Why? Because there's already a lot of mess in between, right? And several moves have already passed. In fact, if I remember correctly, we're on move 13 here. The queen has to go. She has no better square than d8. The other square would be c7, but that wouldn't really be very interesting either. Here, it's also very good because it defends the knight, and in case of knight takes knight, you can recapture with the queen. That's also very interesting. And the game continues with knight to d6 check. The idea is logical, right? If you don't give me your bishop pair, you're going to have to move the king, and my knight will be very well placed. So, without a doubt, the correct move here, without a doubt, is to capture this knight with the bishop and give up the bishop pair. Careful, our queen is also very well positioned. Let's evaluate this position for a moment, because it's true that our king is not very safe, but really my opponent's isn't very safe either. He can't castle because the queen completely cuts off his castling, and besides, the big problem our opponent has is that he's quite trapped back here and can't develop his pieces comfortably. It's true that our bishop also has problems, but it occurs to me, for example, to play g3 and be able to develop it along this diagonal here, and problem solved. So, well, it's a very interesting game where we have a space advantage. Knowing how to evaluate positions, believe me, is extremely useful and important. In fact, what I always do in the academy is train with a positional quiz that works very well because they give you a position and ask you who's better and why. You explain it, tick, 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 however you think, and then it corrects you, right? That works very well for me to train these types of strategic positions. The game continues with bishop to b7, the last missing bishop is developed. Careful, because at some point when c5 is played, this bishop will become a real machine. This rook enters on d1, well, a very interesting move. There's an open file on d, we place the queen, and we also place the rook in such a way that they act in concert right now on the d7 point. If at some point the king wants to do an artificial castling, this point would fall. Therefore, well, first this knight is doing well defending this point, but it could also be kicked out, so they have to be very careful. The game continues with rook c8. White plays rook g1, with the precise idea that they want to push this pawn as I was explaining. Right now it can't be pushed because it would be lost, but with rook g1 it'll be able to push beautifully. The game continues with c5. We already sensed that, right? This bishop could be freed from the pressure with a move like c5. And we'll also know, if you've been paying attention, how white will follow up because their plan is to play g4. Very well. How does the game continue? Rook c6. They're attacking our queen. Where are we going to take her? Well, it seems there's no better square than this one right here. Queen e5. We keep the queen centralized and she can't be attacked. Can they attack her with their queen? Yes, but queen against queen would be an exchange, so we're not worried. The dark squared bishop can't attack her because it's gone, and the knight has no squares to attack from. They could play a move like d6, but then they'd stop defending the d6 square and we'd capture it with the queen. The game now, once the queen has been cleared from this diagonal, continues with castling by black. Good judgment here, they've managed to castle. But white has a good attack up their sleeve. Very interesting move, g5. Pay attention. It might seem like a spectacular move because we're pushing the pawns a lot. We're going here with the rook, with the queen, all facing the same point. But we have to be very careful because it's true that we're attacking a lot, but pawn moves have this, they create weaknesses in the squares around them. And now, after the move knight h5, they're threatening something important. They're threatening to place a rook on this square right here and cause quite a bit of havoc on our position. It would gain a lot of space, it would attack the queen, so we have to be mindful of our plan and not let them penetrate through our weak squares. And how can we solve that? Exactly. Bishop h3. You see what a beautiful move? This bishop is completely cutting off the diagonal so the rook can't enter. And who knows, in the future, we're threatening to completely break the position with the move g6. This move would attack the king, but also, as a discovered attack, it would attack the knight with the queen. Look at how many things we learn in a single game if we analyze it correctly. Leave a like if you want more videos like this, because I'm going to keep making them. Look at the judgment black has here, and how bold they are. But what a beautiful move they make. d6. Do you remember the problem with the move d6? Exactly. The big problem was that they were leaving the d6 pawn hanging. Is there anything better than capturing it for white? No, it must be captured, but careful, it's very dangerous. Why is black giving up a pawn? Well, because now they're opening the file to attack the rook, attack the king. Notice that the queen and the king are on the same file, and that is always, always, always dangerous. First we give check and they have to move, but black's threat now is lethal. You know what they're threatening us with, right? Winning the game, for example, with knight takes f4, they'd win our queen if we didn't take the knight. And once the knight is taken, they'd put the rook on e8, pinning our queen against the king, and this would obviously give the game to the black pieces. A queen up, and we wouldn't have any kind of compensation. When we're down material, but we have compensation somewhere, then there's no problem. However, here there wouldn't be any kind of compensation. You're going to see this detail about compensation now in a few more moves. The game then must continue by defending this point. It's our Achilles heel right now because the threat is knight takes f5. We detect the threat and we solve it. Rook f1. The black player plays rook b6, attacking this point. It's simply stopped with the pawn. Now they attack the a2 point. As you can see, they want to enter with the rook on the 7th. We don't want to allow that, so rook d2, and now black is getting very active with this move d5. Careful, careful, the rook gets active, the bishop too, the rook is going to come to e8 and also get active, this pawn is going to advance, black is getting good compensation. But white has a plan, and do you know what this plan is? Watch out, because all of you who have heart conditions here should be very careful, because this move is extremely interesting. The queen is placed on e5. It's important to note that this move is attacking the queen, so it must retreat. Black continues to press with rook e8, and do you know where that queen went? It didn't go anywhere. They left it right here and played c takes d. Look at this. The queen is being sacrificed completely. Why, chess teacher, is a queen sacrificed? Well, the queen must be captured, otherwise the pawn sacrifice wouldn't make any sense at all. Rook takes queen. Now, after the recapture, black has managed to capture a queen in exchange for a rook and a pawn. Material advantage for black. There is compensation, of course. These two pawns, together with the rooks and the bishop pair, have very strong compensation. These two pawns are passed, so they can go to promote, and few people will be able to stop them. You already know that if one of the two pawns reaches the end, we would turn it back into a queen. So they have to be stopped no matter what. The only way to stop them is by capturing at least one of them with the bishop. However, this has a problem, and that is that we can simply win this bishop with the move bishop g2. If you're used to practicing tactics, I'm sure you found this move, because you've detected a pin. So we're gonna attack the pinned piece. Simple. Good. The idea is that here, we're gonna win back a piece. That's true. For example, here, what happened in the game was that black played the c4 and white played bishop takes bishop. Often the threat is stronger than executing it directly, and I'll explain why. If we capture with the rook, the queen just leaves and that's it. If we capture with the bishop, we're threatening many dangerous discovered attacks, so that queen absolutely has to escape. At this point, no matter how much she escapes, the threat is much bigger. Bishop takes pawn is threatened, winning another pawn, attacking this rook, attacking the queen, so here black keeps advancing their pawn. It's a very interesting move because the following is threatened. If I move the bishop now to make a discovery, I simply take the rook and that's it. Nothing happened here, right? So black might end up in a good position here. However, look at how the player with the white pieces finishes this game, because it's quite interesting. At some point in the middle game, white realized they could reach a winning endgame thanks to their two passed pawns. So do you see how important it is to also think about an endgame? So here, as you've seen, black had to give up one of their bishops so that these two pawns wouldn't be completely lethal. And let's see the finish because it's very interesting. White plays this move here, bishop b7, attacking the rook. There's nothing better, excuse me, the queen is being attacked and also the rook. So there's nothing better than taking the rook and avoiding the threat to the queen, of course. And then here, white simply took this rook. And as you can see, white's position, unlike black's. Look, the game continued like this. These two bishops and this rook in combination are completely lethal. But the true master of the position is this passed pawn. If this passed pawn weren't there, the game would be completely different. Now, if they want to stop this passed pawn, they're gonna have to sacrifice one of their two pieces, and that's why it's so dangerous. Really, here the threat is already to advance the pawn, place the rook on the 7th rank, and who knows if, together with the bishop, win the game by entering with the rook on the 8th rank. And the game continues for a few more moves, but really, this is trivial to win. The queen moves aside a little bit. This pawn can never promote because we have everything very well defended. In fact, we don't even need to waste a tempo capturing it for now. And here black actually resigned, but it could have continued something like this. I take this pawn, not to capture the pawn, but to maneuver with the bishop and come to give this lethal check to the king. No matter how much they cover, I can keep pressing, and as you can see, nothing stops the rook from entering the 7th rank and winning the game. No matter how much they come to defend it, the rook will be able to enter. The pawn advances, the rook enters, see? And here, the game is completely unstoppable. So here the white pieces, as you can see, have understood all phases of the game very well, taking a lot of risks. It's true, you don't need to take so many risks, but this game has really shown that you can take risks if you understand all the concepts well. I hope you loved it. I'm really looking forward to seeing you inside the academy so you can start training with me. You're going to be amazed by everything the academy has inside. I honestly am practically one of the creators, obviously, and I spend the day training in there. I assure you, friends, I assure you, I spend the day training openings, training tactics, training middle games, training endgames. I really love studying, for example, their endgames because you play them. And the academy itself corrects you, okay? Because Grandmaster Mauricio Flores, who is one of the most highly rated chess players in the world, because he understands positional chess like absolutely no one else, has set all this up very well, along with his team, so that we can understand and improve while we practice it. Truly, I assure you, it's definitely worth joining the academy. Otherwise, I wouldn't tell you. I hope you love this video. You have the academy in the description, and we'll see each other tomorrow, as always, in the next video, friends. Goodbye.